What if I told you that every time you check your bank account, you're not actually looking at your financial reality? You're looking at a ghost, a shadow of something that already happened in a place you can't see with your eyes. I know that sounds strange, maybe even impossible, but stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to discover has the power to completely transform your relationship with money. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to attract wealth effortlessly, while others work twice as hard and barely make ends meet? Have you ever wondered why you can follow all the financial advice, create the perfect budget, hustle day and night, and still find yourself stuck in the same place, or worse, sliding backward? Has this ever happened to you? You work harder, you plan better, you do everything right, and yet the numbers in your account refuse to change. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. The number you see on your screen when you log into your banking app isn't the cause of your financial situation. It's the effect. It's an echo of something much deeper, something that happened before you ever opened that app. You've been treating the symptom as if it were the disease, trying to change the reflection in the mirror without ever turning around to change your own face. But before we go deeper into this revelation, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from. Today, it's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, I need you to consider something that might feel uncomfortable at first. What if you're not broken? What if you're not unlucky? Not cursed, not being punished by the universe or held back by circumstances beyond your control? What if everything you're experiencing right now, the debt, the lack, the closed doors, the opportunities that never come, what if all of it is simply a perfect, precise reflection of something you've been unconsciously believing about yourself? I can already hear some of you thinking, that's ridiculous. I don't believe in being poor. I don't want to struggle. I've been trying to change things. And I believe you. Consciously, you want more. Consciously, you're fighting for better, but what you're about to learn is that consciousness has layers, and the deepest layer, the one that's actually creating your financial reality, has been running a program you didn't even know was installed. The ancient teachings understood this. They spoke of it in parables and metaphors because the truth is so radical, so revolutionary, that it threatens everything we've been taught about how the world works. They knew that you are not at the mercy of external forces. They knew that the world you see is not the world that is. And most importantly, they knew the secret of how to wake up from the dream of limitation and step into a reality where abundance is not something you chase, but something you are. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because it goes against everything conventional wisdom has taught you about earning, deserving, and working for money. But if you're ready to see past the illusion, if you're ready to understand why the same patterns keep repeating in your financial life, then stay with me until the end. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because this is where the real transformation begins. You see, everything you've been taught about money is backwards. From the time you were a child, you've been conditioned to believe that money is something outside of you, something scarce, something you have to fight for, something you need to earn, deserve, prove yourself worthy of receiving. You've been taught that if you just work hard enough, if you just find the right strategy, if you just hustle a little more, then the money will come. And so you've spent years, maybe decades, chasing it, running after opportunities, grinding through exhaustion, calculating every move, and yet somehow always feeling like you're one step behind. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Money isn't a thing at all. Money is a state of consciousness. It's not something you get. It's something you already are. Think about that for a moment. Wealth isn't a destination you arrive at after years of struggle. It's an identity, a frequency, a way of being that exists right now in this present moment, accessible to you whether your bank account shows $10 or 10,000. And poverty? Poverty isn't a punishment or a condition you're suffering from. It's simply a suit of clothes you've been wearing for so long that you forgot you could take it off. This revelation hits differently when you really let it sink in. Most people spend their entire lives trying to rearrange the external world, believing that if they can just change the circumstances, then they'll finally feel abundant. They think the job needs to change, the economy needs to improve, the right opportunity needs to appear, and then, only then, will they finally experience the freedom and security they've been craving. But this approach is like standing in front of a mirror with a frown on your face and reaching out to try to make the reflection smile. You can touch the glass all you want. You can wipe it clean. You can adjust the lighting, but the reflection will never change until you change your own face. Your entire life, you've been trying to change the reflection. You've been working harder, planning better, optimizing every detail, hustling through weekends, sacrificing sleep, relationships, peace of mind, all in an attempt to force the outside world to give you what you want. You've been rearranging furniture in a photograph, treating the effect as if it were the cause, trying to manipulate the shadow instead of turning around to face the light. And the exhausting part? It never works, not really. You might get temporary wins, small improvements, brief moments of relief, but the underlying pattern remains the same because you're operating from the wrong level of reality. The journey of true financial transformation doesn't begin with a better strategy or a new opportunity. It begins with a fundamental shift in how you see yourself in relation to money. It starts with recognizing that you are not separate from abundance. You are the very source of it. Every dollar that has ever come into your life, every opportunity that has ever appeared, every door that has ever opened, came through you, not to you. You were the channel, the consciousness, the creative power that allowed it to manifest. And the moment you truly understand this, the moment this truth moves from your head into your heart, everything changes. Most people are walking around with an invisible identity they don't even know they're wearing. They introduce themselves to the world as someone who struggles with money, someone who never has enough, someone who has to work twice as hard for half the results. They wear this identity so consistently that it becomes indistinguishable from who they think they are. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects this identity back to them with absolute precision. The circumstances, the opportunities, the people, the events, all of it conspires to confirm the story they're telling about themselves in the hidden depths of their consciousness. But here's where it gets really interesting. The same mechanism that has been keeping you stuck is the exact same mechanism that can set you free. Because if your external reality is a mirror of your internal state, then changing your internal state must inevitably change your external reality. This isn't wishful thinking or positive affirmations painted over deep-seated doubt. This is about a genuine shift in who you understand yourself to be at the deepest level. It's about taking off the costume of limitation and stepping into the truth of your inherent abundance. The ancient wisdom traditions understood this perfectly. They spoke of consciousness as the only reality, of imagination as the creative power of the universe, of belief as the substance from which all things are made. They weren't speaking metaphorically. They were describing the actual mechanics of manifestation, the hidden operating system behind what we call physical reality. And the most profound insight they offered was this: you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the creator of them. Every single thing you experience in your financial life is a direct reflection of what you've been unconsciously assuming to be true about yourself. Now, I know some of you might be feeling resistance to this idea. Part of you might be thinking, but what about the economy? What about inflation? What about my boss, who refuses to give me a raise? What about all the real, tangible obstacles standing in my way? And I understand that reaction because those things feel incredibly real. They have weight, presence, undeniable impact on your daily life. But what if those obstacles are also part of the reflection? What if even the difficult boss, the struggling economy, the closed doors are all mirrors showing you something about your own consciousness that's ready to shift? Write in the comments, "I'm ready to see this differently," because acknowledging that readiness is the first crack in the old pattern, the first ray of light breaking through into a new way of being. Let me show you something that might be uncomfortable to acknowledge, but it's absolutely critical to understand. Every single morning, without even realizing it, you're participating in a ritual. Not a conscious one, not something you decided to do, but a deeply ingrained pattern that runs on autopilot. You wake up, and within minutes, sometimes seconds, you're already dressed in lack. You reach for your phone, and the first thing you do is check your bank account. And in that moment of checking, there's a feeling. You might call it being responsible or staying on top of things. But if you're really honest with yourself, it's fear, it's anxiety, it's that subtle tightening in your chest that whispers, "Is there enough? Will I make it through this month? What if something unexpected happens?" And then the internal conversation begins. You start rehearsing limitations before you've even gotten out of bed. You think about the bills that are due, the expenses that are coming, the things you wish you could afford but can't. You plan your day, your week, your month from a foundation of scarcity, and you call this being realistic. You tell yourself you're just facing facts, being practical, keeping your expectations in check so you won't be disappointed. But what you're actually doing is reinforcing, strengthening and cementing the very consciousness of lack that's creating your financial reality. If this resonated with you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I share content like this that cuts through the surface-level advice and gets to the real mechanics of transformation. By subscribing, you're ensuring you don't miss the deeper insights that build on what we've covered today. Throughout the day, this pattern continues in 1,000 small ways. You have a conversation with a friend, and somehow the topic turns to money, and you find yourself complaining about how expensive everything is, how hard it is to get ahead, how the system is rigged. You see someone driving a nice car, and instead of feeling inspired, you feel a pang of envy mixed with resignation. Must be nice. I could never afford something like that. You walk past a store window displaying something you want, and you don't even let yourself fully desire it because you've already decided it's out of reach. You're building a prison of limitation, brick by brick, thought by thought, feeling by feeling, and the truly tragic part is that you don't even know you're doing it. Then night comes, and you fall asleep. But you don't fall asleep in peace. You fall asleep still clutching that state of consciousness you claim to despise. You go to bed worried about money, replaying the scarcity of the day, mentally preparing for more struggle tomorrow. And in doing so, you're planting seeds in the most fertile soil that exists, the subconscious mind at the threshold of sleep. Those final thoughts before unconsciousness becomes your reality aren't just thoughts. They're instructions. They're blueprints. They're the mold into which your tomorrow will be poured. This is the hidden truth behind why nothing changes. It's not because you're not working hard enough. It's not because you haven't found the right opportunity. It's because every single day you're unconsciously recommitting to the same state of consciousness that created the lack in the first place. You're being loyal to poverty without even realizing it. And poverty, being the faithful servant that it is, remains loyal to you. But here's where the real revelation comes in, and this is what flips the entire script. You've been taught by parents, teachers, society, even well-meaning financial advisors to wait for conditions to change before you allow yourself to feel abundant. The logic seems reasonable on the surface. When the money comes, then you'll feel secure. When the debt is paid, then you'll feel free. When you get the promotion, then you'll feel confident. When you finally achieve financial stability, then you'll be able to relax and feel abundant. This seems like common sense, doesn't it? It seems like the only rational way to approach life. But this approach is completely backwards, and it's the reason most people stay stuck forever. Waiting is not a neutral state. Waiting is not patient wisdom. Waiting is, in fact, a continuous confession that you do not have. Every moment you spend waiting for external conditions to change before you allow your internal state to shift, you're broadcasting to the universe, I don't have it. I'm not it. I'm separate from it. And the universe, which only responds to what you're being, not what you're wanting, gives you more waiting, more lack, more separation. Think about how backwards this is. You're essentially saying, I'll feel wealthy when I see wealth in my bank account, but your bank account is a mirror. It's showing you what you felt yesterday, last week, last month. It's the lag time between consciousness and manifestation. So if you're waiting for the mirror to change before you change your face, you're going to be waiting forever. The mirror doesn't lead, it follows. The reflection doesn't initiate, it responds. And if you're standing there with a frown, waiting for the reflection to smile first so you can smile back, you fundamentally misunderstand how mirrors work. This is the trap that keeps intelligent, hard-working, well-intentioned people locked in limitation for their entire lives. They're waiting for permission from their external circumstances to feel the abundance that would actually create those circumstances. They're trying to get to the destination without ever boarding the vehicle. They're attempting to harvest without ever planting the seed. And year after year goes by, and they wonder why nothing fundamentally changes. Why? They're stuck in the same patterns, cycling through the same struggles with different details, but the same underlying energy. The transformation you're seeking, not just financial, but the complete shift in how you experience life, requires you to reverse this equation entirely. It demands that you feel abundant now, while the bank account still shows lack. It requires you to assume wealth before wealth appears, to claim the end before the middle fills in, to become it in consciousness before you see it in manifestation. And this feels impossible at first. It feels like lying. It feels like denying reality. But what you're actually doing is denying the false reality of the mirror and turning to face the true reality of consciousness. Put down in the comments, I'm choosing abundance now. Because that choice, made consciously in this moment, is already beginning to shift something fundamental in how you relate to your financial reality. Now here's where this teaching becomes truly revolutionary. And I need you to really hear this, because it goes against every logical instinct you have. You must feel abundant now. Not tomorrow, not when the circumstances improve, not when you finally see evidence in your external world. Now. Right now, while your bank account might be showing numbers you don't like. Right now, while the bills are still sitting on your kitchen counter. Right now, while your situation looks exactly the same as it did yesterday. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't pretending or denying reality. This is understanding which reality is actually real. You see, feeling abundant now, while everything outside remains unchanged, is the only thing that changes the bank account. This sounds backwards, I know. Your logical mind is screaming, how can I feel wealthy when I'm not wealthy? How can I feel secure when the evidence shows insecurity? Isn't that just delusional? But here's the profound truth that shifts everything. The bank account is the result, not the cause. The feeling comes first, then the manifestation follows. Always, without exception. This is law, as reliable and consistent as gravity. You must assume wealth before wealth appears, because assuming it is what causes it to appear. Think about what assumption really means. It's not hoping, not wishing, not wanting. Assumption is claiming something as already true, living from it as an established fact, wearing it as your identity before you have any proof. When you truly assume something, you don't question it. You don't look for validation. You don't check constantly to see if it's working. You simply are it. And from that state of being, everything in your external world begins to reorganize itself to match. This is not metaphysics or mysticism. This is the actual mechanics of how reality operates. The entire financial world, everything you see and experience related to money, is nothing more than a reflection of your consciousness. You're not out there trying to manipulate money, to control it, to chase it down and capture it. What you're actually doing, whether you know it or not, is rearranging consciousness. And money, being a form, being an effect, being a reflection, has absolutely no choice but to mirror that rearrangement. When you change your inner state, the outer world must conform. It's not optional. It's not based on luck or timing or being in the right place. It's inevitable. Let me paint a picture that makes this crystal clear. Imagine you're an actor who's been cast in a role. For years, you've been playing the character of someone who struggles financially. You've memorized the lines, "I can't afford that. Money is always tight. I never have enough." You've perfected the emotions, anxiety when bills arrive, fear when unexpected expenses come up, resignation when opportunities seem out of reach. You've embodied this character so completely that you've forgotten your acting. You think this character is who you actually are. But here's the revelation. You can change roles at any moment. You can step off that stage, take off that costume, and step onto a different stage, playing a completely different character, someone for whom money flows easily, someone who always has more than enough, someone who feels secure and abundant, regardless of external circumstances. The moment you fully commit to this new role, the moment you embody it completely, the script changes. The other actors around you start responding differently. The props change. The entire production shifts to accommodate the character you're now playing. This is what happens when you shift consciousness. You're not changing money. You're changing you. And when you change, everything that surrounds you must change in response, because it's all reflecting who you're being. Your boss, your clients, your opportunities, even random unexpected windfalls. All of it is you pushed out into form. All of it is the mirror showing you what you've been. Assuming about yourself in the depths of your awareness. Most people spend their entire lives trying to rearrange the external pieces, never realizing that those pieces are just symptoms. They're trying to add more zeros to the bank account without ever changing the consciousness that created the current number. They're trying to attract better opportunities without ever becoming the person who naturally receives those opportunities. They're working on the effects while leaving the cause completely untouched, and this is exhausting because effects don't have power. Effects don't create anything. They're just shadows cast by the real source, which is always consciousness. The beautiful part about understanding this is that it puts all the power back in your hands. You're not at the mercy of the economy, the job market, your background, your education, your age, your location, or any other external factor. Those things are all part of the reflection, and reflections change when the source changes. You are the source, your consciousness, your assumptions, your internal state of being. This is where everything begins and ends. This is the hidden control panel that's been running your financial reality all along. When you grasp this, not just intellectually but viscerally in your bones, something shifts. You stop looking outside for solutions. You stop waiting for conditions to improve. You stop blaming circumstances or other people. You turn your attention inward and you ask yourself, what am I assuming to be true right now? What identity am I wearing? What state of consciousness am I living from? And then, with deliberate intention, you choose differently. You put on abundance like a coat. You assume wealth like a fact. You embody sufficiency like a truth that needs no validation. If this video shifted something in you, if it challenged your thinking in a good way, leave a like. It genuinely helps this message reach people who are ready for it, and it lets me know you're finding value in this approach to understanding consciousness and manifestation. This is the journey of transformation, and it begins the moment you stop treating your external financial reality as the truth and start recognizing it as the echo. The truth is in consciousness. Everything else is just the delayed broadcast of what was true for you in your inner world days, weeks, or months ago. Change what's true in your inner world now, and watch the outer world scramble to catch up. Write in the comments, "Consciousness is my true wealth," because acknowledging this shifts your attention from the reflection to the source, from the effect to the cause, from powerlessness to absolute creative power. Now, I want to talk about something that's going to feel uncomfortable, maybe even wrong at first, but it's absolutely necessary for this transformation to happen. To change your financial reality, you must commit what feels like a betrayal. You must become a traitor to the state of consciousness you've been loyal to your entire life. You must believe the invisible more than the visible. You must trust your imagination, that quiet inner voice, that subtle feeling, that vision of what could be, more than you trust your five senses, which are screaming the opposite at you every single day. This is where most people turn back. This is where the journey gets difficult, because what I'm asking you to do feels like lying. It feels like denying what's right in front of your face. You look at your bank account and it shows $1,000, but I'm telling you to assume you're wealthy. You receive a bill you can't pay, but I'm telling you to feel abundant. You get rejected for a loan, passed over for a promotion, see another opportunity slip through your fingers, and I'm telling you to remain in the consciousness of prosperity. Your logical mind rebels against this. Every fiber of your being says, "This is crazy. I need to face facts. I need to be realistic." But here's what you need to understand. What you're calling realistic is just you being loyal to the old pattern. What you're calling facing facts is just you agreeing to stay exactly where you are. The reality you're so committed to defending isn't reality at all. It's yesterday's consciousness solidified into today's circumstances. It's old news. It's the echo of who you were last week, last month, last year, still playing out in your present experience because you haven't changed the frequency you're broadcasting from. Let me reveal something that might shake your entire understanding of what's real. The world you see, the circumstances you experience, the numbers in your account, the job you have or don't have, the bills that arrive, the opportunities that come or don't come, none of this is reality. Not in the way you think. What you call reality is actually a shadow. It's an echo. It's yesterday's assumption that has hardened into today's fact. It's frozen consciousness, solidified belief, crystallized thought, made tangible and visible so you can experience what you've been holding as true in the invisible realm of your inner world. The only real reality is consciousness itself. Everything else, every single thing you can touch, see, measure, or experience with your physical senses is the frozen shadow of consciousness. It's consciousness pushed out into form, delayed by time, made dense and material so it can be perceived. But it's not the source. It's not the cause. It's the effect, always and only the effect. You've been living in a world of shadows your entire life and calling it real. You've been reacting to echoes and treating them as if they were the original sound. This is why you feel so powerless when you focus on circumstances. You're trying to change shadows without changing the light that casts them. You're trying to silence echoes without changing the voice that creates them. And shadows don't change unless the object casting them moves. Echoes don't stop unless the original sound stops. The manifestation doesn't shift unless the consciousness that created it shifts first. Think about a shadow for a moment. If you don't like your shadow, let's say it looks distorted or frightening, what do? Do you go to the shadow and try to reshape it? Do you paint it a different color? Do you argue with it, negotiate with it, work harder to convince it to change? Of course not. That would be insane. You change your position, you move your body, you adjust the light source, and the shadow has no choice but to instantly reflect that change. Your financial circumstances are the shadow. Your consciousness is the body casting it. When you understand this, truly understand it, you stop fighting with circumstances. You stop trying to force outcomes. You stop exhausting yourself trying to manipulate the external world. Instead, you turn your attention to the only place where change can actually originate, your own state of being, your own assumptions, your own consciousness. This is the betrayal I mentioned, and now you can see why it feels so uncomfortable. You're being asked to abandon your allegiance to the visible world. You're being asked to stop trusting what your eyes show you and start trusting what your imagination reveals to you. You're being asked to treat the inner world as more real than the outer world, to value the invisible over the visible, to commit fully to a state of consciousness that has no proof yet, no validation yet, no external confirmation yet. It feels like lying because you've been conditioned to believe that truth comes from outside you. You've been taught that what's real is what's measurable, what's tangible, what everyone else can see and verify. But this teaching flips that completely. It says that what's real is what you assume to be real in consciousness, and everything else is just the time-delayed projection of that inner reality onto the screen of the external world. Put down in the comments, I choose the invisible truth, because that choice is the beginning of everything changing, the moment you stop being ruled by the shadow and start consciously creating from the source. When you make this shift, when you stop pledging allegiance to the visible and start living from the invisible, something profound happens inside you. There's a stillness that descends, a quiet inner peace that has nothing to do with your external circumstances. This stillness comes from knowing, really knowing that you are the operant power in your world. Not your boss, not the economy, not the government, not your past, not your family history, not your education or lack of it. You, your consciousness, the assumptions you hold, the state you occupy. This is the only power that matters, and it's entirely yours. You are not the victim of circumstances. You never were. Circumstances are appearing in you, not to you. They're arising within your consciousness like images on a screen, and you are the screen, the projector, and the one choosing what film to play. Your boss exists in your consciousness. The economy exists in your consciousness. Every bill, every opportunity, every closed door and open window, all of it exists within the vast space of your awareness, and that awareness is what's real. Everything else is just content, just phenomena, just experiences passing through. This realization brings an unshakable stillness because you finally understand that nothing outside of you has power over you. You're not at the mercy of anything or anyone. You're not waiting for permission from the world to be abundant. You're not hoping that conditions will align favorably so you can finally experience prosperity. You are the consciousness in which all conditions appear, and consciousness is the only reality. When you truly get this, when this understanding moves from concept to lived experience, you stop being moved by external events. They still happen, but they no longer define you, control you, or determine your state of being. Now here's something most people never realize. You're praying all the time. Not in the traditional sense of getting on your knees and speaking to some external deity, but through every thought, every assumption, every habitual pattern of feeling, Your inner dialogue is your prayer. Your recurring thoughts are your worship. Your dominant assumptions are your offering to the universe, and the universe responds with perfect precision to whatever you're broadcasting. This is why your life looks the way it does, not because of what you consciously want, but because of what you unconsciously assume and continuously affirm. When you say to yourself, "I need money," what prayer are you praying? You're praying to the god of lack. You're bowing before the altar of insufficiency. You're declaring in the most powerful language that exists, the language of consciousness, that you are separate from money, that you don't have it, that you're in a state of need. And the universe, being a perfect mirror, reflects that state back to you. You get more need, more lack, more separation, because that's what you're claiming as your identity. When you say, "I hope things get better," you're praying to the god of uncertainty. You're affirming that things are not good now, that you're at the mercy of chance, that your well-being depends on external circumstances randomly improving. Hope in this context isn't faith. It's doubt dressed in optimistic clothing. It's the confession that you don't believe you have power over your reality, that you're waiting for forces outside yourself to grant you relief. And again, the universe responds. You get more waiting, more hoping, more uncertainty, because that's the state you're living from. But when you claim, "I am wealth," not "I want wealth," not "I'm trying to become wealthy," but "I am wealth," everything changes. This is the prayer that can actually be answered, because it's not a prayer of begging. It's a prayer of recognition. It's claiming what already is. You're not asking for something separate from you to come to you. You're declaring that you and abundance are one, that wealth is your nature, that prosperity is your identity. And when you pray this prayer, when you live from this assumption, the universe has no choice but to pour evidence of that truth into your experience. This is the reversal that transforms everything. You stop praying from poverty and start praying from prosperity. You stop affirming lack and start affirming sufficiency. You stop claiming not enough and start claiming more than enough. And this isn't just positive thinking or affirmations you repeat mechanically while still feeling broke inside. This is a genuine shift in your core assumption about who you are in relation to money. It's changing your identity at the deepest level, putting on the consciousness of wealth like it's the most natural thing in the world. The power of this cannot be overstated. When you change your prayer, when you change the continuous broadcast of assumptions, thoughts, and feelings you're emanating, you change your world. Not eventually, not theoretically, but actually and inevitably. Because your world is not independent of your consciousness. Your world is the mirror, the echo, the shadow of your consciousness. Change the consciousness, and the world must change. This is law, as reliable as mathematics, as consistent as the rising sun. Write in the comments, "I am the power," because speaking it, declaring it, even in a comment, is practicing the prayer of recognition rather than the prayer of begging. Let me show you what happens when you understand this principle deeply enough to stop doing the one thing that's actually preventing your transformation. You need to stop trying to manage the outside world. I know this goes against every instinct you have, but managing, controlling, and obsessing over your external circumstances is literally killing your ability to manifest what you want. Think about how much time and energy you spend checking your bank account. You look at it in the morning, maybe before lunch, definitely in the evening, possibly late at night before bed. Some of you check it 20 times a day, and here's the honest question. Has checking it ever once changed the number? Has staring at that balance ever made it increase? You calculate and recalculate your budget. You move numbers around on spreadsheets. You strategize about how to cut expenses, how to make a little more stretch a little further, how to survive until the next paycheck. You worry about what could go wrong, what unexpected expense might appear, whether you'll have enough. And all of this mental and emotional energy, this constant surveillance of your financial situation, is completely useless. Actually, it's worse than useless. It's actively reinforcing the state of lack you're trying to escape, because every time you check with anxiety, every time you calculate with fear, every time you worry about having enough, you're impressing that consciousness deeper into your being. You're trying to fix the reflection without changing your face, and we've already established that doesn't work. The reflection can't lead. The mirror doesn't decide. The shadow doesn't have agency. You are standing there frantically polishing the mirror, adjusting the angle, wiping away smudges, hoping that somehow your efforts will make the reflection smile differently. But the reflection is loyal to only one thing, your face. Change your face, and the reflection changes instantly and automatically. Keep your face the same while working on the reflection, and you'll work yourself into exhaustion with nothing to show for it. Now, I want to share a story with you that illustrates how this actually works in real life, because theory is one thing, but seeing the principle in action is what creates belief. There was a couple, deeply devoted to each other, living in a modest apartment, but dreaming of something more. They wanted a penthouse in New York City, not just any penthouse, but one with very specific features. The husband wanted a huge window overlooking a magnificent view. The wife wanted one wall completely mirrored from top to bottom. They both wanted a wood-burning fireplace, and it had to be in the heart of the city. Now, if you know anything about New York real estate, you know this was essentially impossible. The housing market at that time was brutal. People were buying furniture they didn't want just to secure apartments. Buildings were being leased before construction was even completed. Finding any apartment was nearly impossible, let alone a penthouse with such specific requirements. Every logical, practical, realistic assessment would say this couple was dreaming too big, being unrealistic, setting themselves up for disappointment. But here's what happened. Without even telling each other, they both independently began to apply this principle we've been discussing. Every single night, before sleep, the husband would lie in bed and, instead of thinking about their current modest apartment, instead of worrying about whether they could afford what they wanted, he would imagine himself already living in that penthouse. He would see himself waking up and walking to that huge window. He would feel the satisfaction of looking out over the city. He would imagine sitting on the terrace with his wife, having cocktails with friends, everyone thoroughly enjoying the space. He would see the fireplace burning, feel the warmth, hear the laughter. The wife, not knowing her husband was doing this, was doing the exact same thing. She would lie down at night and imagine herself in that mirrored penthouse. She would see herself walking past those mirrors, catching her reflection, feeling the spaciousness and beauty of the place. She would imagine hosting gatherings, enjoying the fireplace, waking up every morning in the place of her dreams. And here's the crucial part. Neither of them was hoping, wishing, or wanting. They weren't visualizing to try to make it happen. They were living in the end. They were assuming it was already done. In consciousness, they had already moved in. They maintained this practice night after night through March and April. And here's what's interesting. They continued to look at apartments in the physical world, but there was no desperation in their search. There was no anxiety, no fear that it wouldn't work out, because in their consciousness, they were already living there. The outer search was just going through the motions, while the inner reality was already settled. Put down in the comments, "I'm living from the end," because that statement itself is a shift in consciousness, a declaration that you're no longer waiting for circumstances to change before you claim what you desire. Something remarkable happened to the husband after about 2 weeks of this nightly practice. He shared later that he would wake up in the morning and, for those first few seconds between sleep and full consciousness, he would genuinely forget he wasn't already in the penthouse. He would lie there feeling the peace, the satisfaction, the absolute naturalness of living in that space. Then he'd open his eyes, see his current bedroom, and instead of feeling disappointed or discouraged, he would actually smile. Why? Because he knew. He understood at a level, deeper than logic, that what was real in consciousness must become real in form. The assumption had taken root so deeply that the outer contradiction no longer moved him, no longer shook his certainty. The wife experienced something similar, though she described it differently. She told others that she began to feel wealthy in a way she'd never felt before, and this is the part I really want you to catch. Her circumstances hadn't changed yet. Her bank account was the same. Her living situation was the same. Nothing in her external world had shifted, but her consciousness had transformed. She would walk through the city, and instead of feeling envious of people who lived in beautiful spaces, she felt kinship with them. She'd pass by Central Park and think to herself, soon I'll see this view every morning from my own window. Not as a wish, not as a hope, but as a knowing, as a fact already accomplished in the only place that truly matters, consciousness. Then the bridge began to form, and this is where you see the law in action. They continued their apartment search, but now without any attachment to outcomes. One afternoon, almost by accident, they found themselves on Upper Fifth Avenue. A new building had just been completed, and the agent mentioned, almost in passing, like it was just another detail, that there was a penthouse available. They went to see it, and the moment they stepped inside, both of them felt it simultaneously. This was the exact place they'd been living in, within their imagination, for weeks. The huge window overlooking Central Park, exactly as the husband had imagined it. The mirrored wall, precisely as the wife had envisioned. The fireplace they'd both seen burning in their mind's eye, now here in physical form, waiting to be lit. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because this is where most people would have stopped and said, see, it doesn't work. The rent was exorbitant. It was several $1,000s a year more than they had planned to spend, way beyond what they thought they could afford. Most people would have looked at that number and felt defeated, would have walked away thinking the universe was dangling their dream in front of them, but making it just out of reach. But this couple had been living from the end for weeks now. They had so thoroughly inhabited the consciousness of already living there that a number on a page couldn't shake them. They made an offer. They proposed a rental amount they felt was fair, one that aligned with what they genuinely could handle, and they asked the agent to present it to the owners. Then, and this is crucial, they continued their practice. They didn't stop assuming. They didn't fall back into worry or doubt. They kept falling asleep in the penthouse. They kept living from the end. They maintained the state even when logic said it was unlikely the owners would accept such a significantly lower offer. In early summer, the owners accepted their proposal. The couple moved into the penthouse on Upper Fifth Avenue, facing Central Park, at the exact price they had offered, not the inflated amount originally requested. They got everything they'd imagined: the window, the mirrors, the fireplace, the view, the terrace. Every single detail matched what they'd been living in consciousness. Now, did this couple attract the penthouse? Did they manifest it through some mystical power? No. What they did was far more profound and far more practical. They changed their state of consciousness. They stopped being the couple who wanted a penthouse and became the couple who already lived in a penthouse. And when they made that shift in consciousness, when they truly assumed the end, the entire outer world had to rearrange itself to match. The city didn't change. The housing shortage was still real. The competition was still fierce. But in their world, and this is key, in their world, a penthouse appeared exactly as they had imagined it, because your world is not the world. Your world is your consciousness pushed out, projected onto the screen of space and time. Change your consciousness, and you change your world. It's not optional. It's not based on luck. It's law. Write in the comments, my assumption creates my reality. Because recognizing this truth is the foundation of everything that follows, the keystone that holds the entire transformation together. Now let me share another story that demonstrates this principle from a completely different angle, because I want you to see that this isn't about one lucky couple or one specific situation. This is about a law that operates consistently, regardless of circumstances. There was a man who worked as an executive at a bank. He'd been there for many years, working hard, showing up consistently, doing everything right by conventional standards. He was competent, reliable, respected by his colleagues. But he felt trapped. He felt like his potential was being wasted, like he was meant for something more, but couldn't see any path to get there. Every time he approached his superiors about advancement, about taking on more responsibility, about moving into a position that would actually challenge him and utilize his skills, they gave him the same response. There's no room for advancement. The positions above him were filled. The structure was set. He should be grateful for what he had, and if he was unhappy, well, he could always seek employment elsewhere. This was their answer, delivered with that polite corporate coldness that makes you feel both dismissed and trapped at the same time. The real pressure came from his personal life. He had a family to support, children who needed education, futures to secure. His current salary wasn't enough to provide the kind of life he envisioned for them. He needed more income, he needed a better position. But the bank had made it abundantly clear there was no path forward. His options appeared to be stay where he was and accept limitation, or leave, and risk everything, with no guarantee of finding something better. He felt stuck between two walls, unable to move in any direction. What he wanted, what his heart truly desired, was to manage investment funds for a large institution, a foundation, a great university, something with real responsibility and meaning. Somewhere he could use his knowledge and his skills at the highest level and be genuinely valued for his expertise. Somewhere the compensation would reflect his actual worth. But from where he stood, this seemed completely impossible. How do you get from being a stuck mid-level bank executive to managing investments for a major institution? There was no clear path, no obvious strategy, no ladder to climb. Then he encountered this teaching, the same principles we've been discussing. He learned that his current situation wasn't a fact, it was a reflection. He learned that if he wanted to change his circumstances, he had to change his consciousness first. So he made a decision. Every single night before falling asleep, he would imagine a very specific scene. He would picture himself at the end of one of the most important and successful days of his life. In his imagination, that day had just concluded a deal. He had signed the contract to join exactly the kind of organization he'd always wanted to work for. He had stepped into the position he'd always desired. He didn't imagine the process of getting there. He didn't visualize job applications or interviews or networking events. He went straight to the end. He felt what it would feel like to close that deal, to know it was done, to feel the satisfaction of having achieved what he wanted. He would lie there and feel the relief washing over him, the sense of accomplishment, the rightness of it. He would let that feeling fill every cell of his body until it felt completely natural, until it felt like a memory rather than a fantasy. And from that feeling of completion, from that state of "it is done," he would drift into sleep. He did this faithfully, night after night, through December and into January. There were difficult nights when his mind would wander to his current situation, to the bills that needed paying, to the conversation with his superior who'd told him there was no future. Doubt would creep in. His rational mind would say, "This is foolish, nothing is changing. You're just imagining things while your real life stays exactly the same." But he had made a commitment, and he kept. Returning to the practice, he would gently bring his attention back to the end result, back to the feeling of the deal being closed, back to the consciousness of already having what he desired. Something shifted around the third week of January. He told others later that he stopped worrying about money, not because his external circumstances had changed, They hadn't. His salary was still the same, his job was still the same, but because internally he had become a different person. He was no longer the stuck bank employee hoping for change. In consciousness, he had become the investment executive whose services were valued and sought after. He was living from the end, and from that state, the money worries simply had nothing to attach to anymore. Put down in the comments, "I'm becoming who I desire to be," because that shift from wanting to being is where all transformation originates, the bridge between where you are and where you're going. Then, in early February, something happened that the executive never could have orchestrated, never could have planned, never could have made happen through conventional effort. He received a phone call completely out of the blue. A director from one of the wealthiest foundations in the world was on the line. They had somehow heard about his work, had been impressed with his background, and they wanted to know if he would be interested in joining their foundation in an executive capacity, handling their investments. Just like that, no job search, no resume sent, no networking events or connections pulled. The bridge appeared exactly when his consciousness was ready for it. He accepted the position, and today he manages investments for that foundation. His income is substantially higher than it was at the bank. He has the responsibility he craved, the respect he desired, the sense of purpose he'd been missing. But here's what's most important to understand. He didn't attract this job through effort or strategy. He didn't make it happen through force of will. What he did was change his state of consciousness. He stopped being the man stuck at the bank and became the man who managed investments for a great foundation. And once he became that in consciousness, the outer world had no choice but to conform. The phone call came because doors always open for the state of consciousness you're occupying. Now, I want to share one more story because this one illustrates how deeply we can be trapped by an identity we don't even realize we're wearing. There was a young woman, an artist, who was struggling in every sense of the word. She created beautiful paintings, work that genuinely moved people, but nobody was buying them. She was working part-time jobs that she hated, jobs that left her exhausted and with barely any time or energy to actually paint. She would go to galleries and see other artists' work selling for thousands of dollars, and she would feel this crushing despair mixed with confusion. Why them and not me? What do they have that I don't? Why is success coming to everyone else while I'm drowning? One day she attended a teaching on these principles, and something clicked. She was asked to pay attention to how she introduced herself to people, how she talked about her work, what identity she was claiming every time she spoke about being an artist. And when she really listened to herself, she was shocked. Every single time someone asked what she did, she would say something like, "I'm an artist, but I can't make a living from it," or "I paint, but I'm basically a starving artist." She had taken on the identity of the struggling, starving artist and was wearing it like a badge of honor, like proof of her authenticity, like evidence that she was a real artist because real artists suffer for their craft. She realized that she had been unconsciously assuming and claiming poverty as an essential part of her artistic identity. She had made lack and struggle synonymous with being an artist, as if you couldn't be a genuine creative person unless you were also financially desperate. And of course, poverty is what she experienced, because the universe doesn't judge your assumptions. It simply mirrors them back to you with absolute precision. She was getting exactly what she was claiming, the identity of a starving artist, complete with the starvation. This realization shook her. She saw that she had been loyal to this identity, faithful to this story about herself, and it had been faithfully manifesting in her experience. So she made a decision right there to change the assumption. She decided to stop being the starving artist and start being the successful artist whose work was valued and sought after. Every night before sleep, she would imagine standing in a gallery where her paintings hung on the walls, each one marked with a little red sold sticker. She would imagine collectors approaching her, complimenting her work, asking to commission new pieces. She would feel what it felt like to be valued, to make a living doing what she loved, to check her bank account and see abundance flowing from her art. During the day, when someone would ask what she did, she changed her response completely. She stopped saying she was struggling. She stopped wearing poverty as part of her identity. Instead, she would say, "I'm an artist. My work is selling beautifully." At first, when she said this, it felt like a lie. Her current circumstances screamed the opposite, but she understood now that circumstances were the reflection, not the reality. So she persisted. She maintained the state. She lived from the end, even when the middle was still empty. Write in the comments, "I'm rewriting my story." Because that's exactly what transformation requires, the courage to stop telling the old story and start living the new one before you have any evidence. Within just a few weeks of maintaining this new assumption, the bridge began to form in ways she never could have predicted. A friend of a friend happened to mention her work to a gallery owner. The gallery owner, intrigued, asked to see her portfolio. Within 2 weeks, they offered her a show. Within a month of that show opening, 3 of her paintings sold. Within 6 months, she was making more from her art than she had ever made at those soul-crushing part-time jobs. Today, she paints full-time. She lives from her art. She is the successful artist she assumed herself to be in consciousness. Before there was any evidence in her external world, did the art world suddenly change? Did collectors suddenly develop better taste? Did the universe randomly decide to be kind to her? No. What changed was her assumption about herself. She stopped being the starving artist and became the successful artist, and the outer world, being nothing more than a mirror of consciousness, rearranged itself to reflect that change. The opportunities were always there. The collectors were always there. The galleries were always there, but they were invisible to her when she was wearing the identity of poverty. The moment she changed the identity, they appeared as if by magic, though it wasn't magic at all, it was law. Now, these 3 stories, the couple, the executive, the artist, all reveal the same fundamental truth that I need you to understand at the deepest level. You are praying constantly, not occasionally. Not just when you're asking for something specific, but all the time, every moment of every day. Your thoughts are prayers. Your assumptions are commands to the universe. Your habitual feelings are seeds being planted in the fertile soil of consciousness, and those seeds will grow into the experiences you harvest. When you think to yourself, "I need money," what are you actually doing? You're praying. You're not praying to some distant God who might or might not answer. You're praying to the creative power of consciousness itself, and you're telling it, "I am in a state of need. I'm separate from money. I don't have it." And consciousness, being impersonal and precise, responds to that prayer by giving you more need, more separation, more experiences of not having. You're literally commanding the universe to keep you in lack through that single thought. When you say to yourself or others, "I hope things get better," you're praying again. You're praying to uncertainty. You're affirming that things are not good now, that you're at the mercy of forces outside yourself, that you're waiting for random circumstances to shift in your favor. Hope, in this context, is just fear dressed in slightly more optimistic clothing. It's the confession that you don't believe you have creative power, that you're a passive victim waiting for external conditions to grant you relief. And again, consciousness responds with perfect accuracy. You get more waiting, more hoping, more uncertainty, because that's the state you're broadcasting from. Every complaint about your financial situation is a prayer for more poverty. Every worry about bills is a prayer for more bills. Every anxiety about the future is a prayer for more anxiety. Every moment you spend rehearsing lack in your mind is a moment you're impressing that lack deeper into your consciousness, and consciousness is the only creative power. It doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you're assuming. It simply creates from whatever state you're occupying. But here's the beautiful reversal, and this is where everything changes. When you claim, "I am wealth," not as a hope, not as a wish, not as something you're trying to convince yourself of, but as a recognition of what's true in consciousness, you're praying a completely different prayer. You're no longer begging, you're recognizing. You're not asking for something separate from you to come to you. You're declaring that you and abundance are one, that wealth is your nature, that prosperity is your identity. Write in the comments, "My thoughts are creating my reality," because recognizing this truth puts the power back where it belongs, in your hands, in your consciousness, in your ability to choose what you're claiming every single moment. This brings us to the most powerful two words in any language, and once you understand what these words actually mean, you'll never use them carelessly again. I am. These two words are not just grammar. They're not just a way to describe yourself. They are the creative power itself. In ancient wisdom traditions, when people spoke of God, they weren't referring to some entity sitting on a cloud judging humanity. They were pointing to the creative power of consciousness, the force that brings worlds into being. And that power lives in you as your own wonderful human imagination expressed through these two words, I am. Whatever you claim after I am, you become. This is not poetry. This is not metaphor. This is literal truth. When you say, I am broke, you're not describing your bank account. You're commanding your reality to arrange itself around that identity. When you say, I am struggling, you're not stating a fact. You're creating the experience of struggle. When you say, I am worried about money, you're not expressing concern. You're constructing a world in which worry about money makes sense because you've claimed it as your identity. The devastating part is that most people use I am unconsciously dozens of times a day to reinforce the exact state they're trying to escape. They wake up and say, I'm so tired of being broke. They look at bills and say, I'm overwhelmed. They see someone else's success and say, I am never that lucky. With every careless I am statement, they're driving the nails deeper into their own limitation, building the prison stronger, making the walls thicker, and wondering why they can't break free. But here's where the power reveals itself. When you say, I will be wealthy, you think you're being hopeful, optimistic, goal-oriented. But listen to what that statement actually contains. I will be is future tense, which means you're confessing in the present tense that you are not. I will be wealthy literally means I am not wealthy now. And consciousness, which only knows now, responds to what you're claiming now. So you get more not wealthy now stretched infinitely into the future because that's what you're affirming. But when you say, I am wealthy, everything shifts. You're claiming it now. You're identifying with it now. You're wearing it as your identity now. And because consciousness is the only reality, because the outer world is just consciousness made visible, when you claim, I am wealthy in consciousness, you set in motion forces that must make that visible in manifestation. It's law. It's inevitable. The timing is the only variable, but the outcome is guaranteed. Your inner speech, that constant stream of thoughts running through your mind from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep, is your prayer without ceasing. It's the continuous broadcast you're sending to the universe about who you are and what you expect. If your inner speech is dominated by complaints about money, by worries about bills, by fears about the future, by resentment about what others have that you don't, then you're praying the prayer of poverty all day long. And poverty, being the faithful servant that it is, keeps showing up to confirm your prayer. But if you discipline that inner speech, if You become conscious of what you're saying to yourself and deliberately choose statements of abundance, claims of sufficiency, declarations of wealth. Then you're praying the prayer of prosperity. Not once a week, not just during a morning meditation, but continuously, all day long. You're impressing consciousness with the state of abundance. And consciousness, having no choice but to create from whatever is impressed upon it, begins to manifest that abundance in your tangible experience. The transformation isn't about finding new opportunities or working harder or getting lucky breaks. The transformation is about taking control of the two words, I am, and the inner speech that follows them. This is where all creative power resides. This is the switch that controls everything, and it's been in your hands the entire time. Put down in the comments, I am abundance, because speaking it, even in a comment, is practicing the conscious use of the most creative power in the universe. Now, let me reveal something that will completely shift how you see everything in your life, and I mean everything. Not money, not your job, not the economy, not the balance in your bank account. None of these things are reality. They feel real. They look real. They have weight and consequences and undeniable impact on your daily experience. But they are not reality. They are shadows. They are reflections. They are frozen forms of an inner state that you've been holding, often unconsciously, for days, or months, or years. Consciousness is the only reality. Everything else is its projection, its echo, its crystallized form appearing in space and time. This is why you felt so powerless all this time. You've been worshipping the mirror instead of the face. You've been trying to change the echo without ever changing the voice that created it. You've been attempting to manipulate shadows without realizing that shadows don't have substance or power. They're just darkness shaped by light. And you are the light. Your consciousness is the light. Change the light, and every shadow in your world changes instantly and automatically. Let me give you a metaphor that makes this undeniably clear, because once you see this, you can't unsee it. Imagine you're standing in front of a full-length mirror, and you notice that your reflection is frowning. The frown bothers you. You don't like seeing yourself that way. You want the reflection to smile. So, what do? Do you reach out and try to manipulate the reflection? Do you touch the glass and try to push the corners of the mouth upward? Do you negotiate with the mirror, asking it politely to please show you smiling? Do you work harder on the reflection, spending hours analyzing why it won't smile, developing strategies to force it to change? Of course not. That would be completely insane. Everyone knows that's not how mirrors work. The reflection has no independent existence. It has no power. It has no ability to change itself. It simply reflects whatever is in front of it with absolute precision and zero deviation. If you want the reflection to smile, there's only one thing you can do. Smile yourself. Change your face, and the reflection changes instantly. Not eventually. Not if you're lucky, not if conditions are right, instantly and automatically, because that's the nature of reflection. Your entire world is the mirror. Every circumstance you see, every number in your bank account, every opportunity that comes or doesn't come, every person who treats you a certain way, every door that opens or stays closed, all of it is the reflection. And your consciousness is the face. When you understand this, really understand it, you stop wasting energy trying to change the reflection. You stop exhausting yourself, trying to manipulate circumstances, control people, force opportunities, or make money appear through effort alone. You turn your attention to the only place where change actually originates, your own consciousness. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change the reflection while keeping their face exactly the same. They work harder, strategize better, hustle longer, but they never change the state of consciousness they're operating from. They're trying to make the mirror smile, while they're still frowning. They're demanding different results while maintaining the same assumptions. They're hoping for abundance while dwelling in the consciousness of lack. And they're confused and frustrated when nothing fundamentally changes, when they're cycling through the same patterns with different details but the same underlying energy. But when you grasp that consciousness is the only reality, when you truly see that everything else is just the lag time between inner state and outer manifestation, you stop being moved by circumstances. You stop reacting to the numbers on the screen. You stop letting the external world tell you who you are and what's possible. You turn inward. You ask yourself, what am I assuming right now? What state of consciousness am I occupying? What face am I presenting to the mirror of reality? And then, with full awareness and deliberate intention, you change it. You change your consciousness, knowing with absolute certainty that the reflection must follow. This isn't faith in the religious sense of believing without evidence. This is understanding the mechanics of reality. This is seeing how the machinery actually operates. The mirror doesn't have a choice. The reflection can't refuse. The shadow can't resist the movement of the object casting it. When you change consciousness, manifestation is inevitable. It's not maybe, not hopefully, not if you're worthy. It's guaranteed by the very structure of reality itself. Write in the comments, I am the face, not the reflection. Because that distinction is everything, the difference between powerlessness and absolute creative authority over your experience. Now let me show you the subtle but absolutely critical distinction that separates those who successfully transform their financial reality from those who stay stuck despite their best efforts. Most people think of their desire. They stand in their current state of lack and look at wealth as something over there, something separate, something they need to move toward. They imagine having money the way someone outside a warm house imagines being inside. They're looking at it from a distance, wanting it, hoping for it, trying to figure out how to get to it. But they remain outside the entire time, never actually entering the house in consciousness. Living from the end is completely different. It means thinking from your desire, not of it. You don't imagine being wealthy while still occupying the consciousness of poverty. You actually enter the state of wealth in your imagination. You don't see yourself becoming abundant. You see from the eyes of someone who already is abundant. You don't watch yourself having money. You experience what someone with money experiences. You occupy the state rather than wishing you were in it. You wear the identity rather than admiring it from afar. Let me make this crystal clear with a specific example. Suppose you desire $10,000. If you're thinking of the desire, you might visualize that money coming to you. You see yourself receiving a check, opening your banking app, and seeing the new balance, maybe counting the bills in your hands. But notice where you are in this visualization. You're still the person who doesn't have the money, watching the person who's about to receive it. You're observing from outside the experience. You're looking at the end result as something that will happen to you. And that will happen keeps it perpetually in the future, always just out of reach, because you're maintaining the consciousness of not having. But if you're thinking from the desire, if you're living from the end, you do something radically different. You don't imagine receiving the money. You imagine already having received it. You don't visualize it coming. You visualize it here. You ask yourself, if I already had this $10,000, what would I be doing right now? How would I feel? What would be different about my day, my decisions, my energy? And then you enter that feeling. Maybe you'd be planning a trip you've wanted to take, so you imagine planning it. Maybe you'd feel relief that a pressing debt is handled, so you feel that relief now. You step into the consciousness of someone who has what you desire, and you live there in imagination. This distinction seems subtle, but it's everything. One keeps you in the state of wanting. The other puts you in the state of having, and only the state of having can manifest, because consciousness creates from what it is, not from what it wants. Wanting perpetuates wanting. Being perpetuates being. This is why people can visualize and affirm for years without results. They're thinking of the desire while remaining in the consciousness of lack. They're trying to get to the house without ever actually walking through the door in their imagination. Now, here's the part that trips most people up, and it's crucial you understand this. Visualization without feeling is completely worthless. You can imagine money all day long. You can see yourself with perfect clarity in a mansion, driving an expensive car, wearing designer clothes, living the life you want. But if you don't feel wealthy, while you're imagining these things, you're wasting your time. You're just daydreaming. You're creating mental pictures without impressing consciousness, and mental pictures alone don't create anything. The feeling is the secret. The feeling is what impresses consciousness. The feeling is what actually plants the seed. But here's where people misunderstand. When I say feeling, I don't mean emotion. I don't mean excitement or joy or happiness. Those emotions might be present, but they're not what I'm talking about. The feeling I mean is the sense of naturalness, of ease, of it being taken for granted. It's the feeling you have about things you already possess. You don't feel excited about having a place to live. You just naturally assume you have one. You don't feel emotional about wearing clothes. You take it for granted that you're dressed. That naturalness, that calm acceptance, that, of course I have this quality, that's the feeling that creates. Write in the comments, I'm living from having it now, because that statement itself is a practice in shifting from the consciousness of wanting to the consciousness of being. Think about how you feel right now sitting wherever you are. You're probably in a chair or on a couch or lying in bed. Do you feel excited about having that place to sit? Do you feel emotional about it? Are you constantly grateful and amazed that you have furniture? Of course not. It's just there. It's yours. It's natural. You take it completely for granted. You don't think about it, don't question it, don't worry that it might disappear. It's just a settled fact of your reality, so mundane that you barely notice it. That's the exact feeling you need to cultivate around wealth. Not excitement, not euphoria, not this heightened emotional state that you're trying to maintain through sheer willpower. Just the calm, quiet, completely natural sense of course I'm wealthy. Of course money flows to me. Of course I have more than enough. It's not special. It's not remarkable. It's just the way it is. When you can think about having money with the same naturalness you think about wearing clothes or having a roof over your head, you've entered the consciousness that creates wealth. That's the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not fireworks and celebration, but peaceful certainty. This is why trying to force excitement about money often backfires. Excitement implies that something unusual is happening, something surprising, something that doesn't normally occur in your life. But if you're trying to make wealth normal in your experience, excitement actually reinforces that it's abnormal. The naturalness is what tells consciousness, this is who I am, this is my reality, this is how things are for me. And consciousness, receiving that message, begins to construct circumstances that match that calm assumption. Now, let me teach you one of the most powerful techniques I know for accelerating this transformation, and it's something you can start using tonight. It's called revision, and it works by changing the meaning of your past. Not the facts, you can't change what physically happened, but the meaning, the emotional impression, the seed that was planted in consciousness. Every day things happen. Some confirm your desire, some seem to contradict it, some make you feel abundant, some trigger feelings of lack. And every night before you fall asleep, you unconsciously review these events, replaying them in your mind. And whatever you replay, you reinforce. If you had a moment today where you checked your bank account and felt that sinking feeling of fear or worry, and you go to sleep tonight still carrying that impression, you're planting a seed of lack in the most fertile ground that exists, your consciousness at the threshold of sleep. That seed will grow. Tomorrow you'll wake up and experience more circumstances that generate that same feeling of fear and insufficiency because you impressed it into consciousness last night. The cycle continues, and you wonder why nothing ever changes. But revision gives you the power to interrupt this cycle. Tonight, before you fall asleep, you can go back to that moment when you checked your account in your imagination. You can replay the scene, but this time, change the ending. See yourself looking at the screen, but instead of seeing a low balance that triggers anxiety, see abundance. See more than enough, and feel what you would feel if that's what you saw. Relief, satisfaction, peace, that calm knowing that you're taken care of. You're not pretending it happened differently. You're changing the impression it left on consciousness. You're pulling up the seed of lack and planting a seed of abundance in its place. This isn't denial. This isn't living in fantasy. This is understanding that the event itself has no power. Only the meaning you assign to it in consciousness has power, and you get to choose what meaning you assign. You get to decide what impression you carry into sleep. If something happened today that reinforced poverty, you can revise it before bed so it reinforces prosperity instead. You can literally rewrite your day in imagination, changing every moment that contradicted your desire into a moment that confirmed it. The impact of this practice is profound because you're no longer allowing your external circumstances to dictate your internal state. You're taking control. You're refusing to let the day end in defeat. You're consciously choosing what gets impressed into your subconscious at the most powerful time. The threshold of sleep, when consciousness is most receptive, most open, most ready to accept whatever you give it as the blueprint for tomorrow. Put down in the comments, "I'm revising my day into abundance," because declaring this intention strengthens your commitment to actually doing it tonight before you sleep. This brings me to something so powerful, so critical, that if you only take one thing from everything we've discussed, let it be this: you must guard the threshold of sleep like your financial future depends on it, because it does. That moment right before you drift into unconsciousness, those final thoughts and feelings as you're falling asleep, those are not just random mental activity. They are seeds being planted in the deepest, most fertile soil that exists, your subconscious mind. And the subconscious is the womb from which everything in your life is born. What you plant there tonight, you harvest tomorrow, next week, next month. There is no more powerful time for impression than this threshold moment. This is why most people stay stuck. They spend their day trying to be positive. Maybe they do some affirmations. Maybe they visualize for a few minutes, but then they go to bed worried. They fall asleep rehearsing their problems, calculating their lack, feeling the weight of their circumstances. And in doing so, they're using the most powerful creative moment of their entire day to reinforce exactly what they're trying to escape. They're planting seeds of poverty right before sleep, and then wondering why they wake up to a harvest of lack. You cannot afford to fall asleep in the consciousness of limitation. You cannot let the last impression of your day be fear, worry, or insufficiency. This is non-negotiable if you're serious about transformation. No matter what happened during the day, no matter how challenging the circumstances, no matter what evidence the world presented, you must end your day by assuming the wish fulfilled. You must fall asleep wealthy, abundant, secure, complete. Because that final feeling, that last assumption, that closing thought is what gets impressed most deeply into consciousness, and consciousness creates from what's impressed upon it. Now let me give you the specific technique that makes this effortless, the method that allows you to harness this threshold moment with precision and power. It's called the state akin to sleep. And it's the most direct path I know for impressing your desire into the subconscious. Tonight, when you're ready for bed, lie flat on your back, get comfortable. Close your eyes and begin to relax your body completely. Let go of tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. Let your body grow heavy, comfortable, drowsy. You're inducing a state of physical immobility where you could move if you wanted to, but you have no desire to move because it feels so good to just be still. You're not trying to fall asleep yet, but you're letting yourself drift toward that edge, that threshold between waking and sleeping, where consciousness becomes fluid and receptive. In this drowsy, relaxed state, you imagine. But you don't imagine the process or the journey or how your desire will be fulfilled. You don't visualize applying for loans or working extra hours or strategizing your way to wealth. You imagine the end. You imagine a short, simple scene, maybe just 3 to 5 seconds long, that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Maybe you imagine yourself looking at your bank statement and feeling satisfied at the abundance you see. Maybe you imagine a friend congratulating you on your financial success. Maybe you imagine making a purchase you've wanted without any concern about the cost. Maybe you imagine yourself in the home you desire, or driving the car you want, or simply feeling that deep sense of security that comes from having more than enough. The specific scene doesn't matter as much as what it implies. It must imply that your desire is already done, already accomplished, already yours. And here's the crucial part. You don't just see this scene like you're watching a movie. You enter it. You make it sensory. You feel the textures, hear the sounds, notice the details. You make it as real as possible in your imagination. But most importantly, you feel the feeling. How would you feel if this were happening right now? Satisfaction, relief, joy, gratitude, peace. Whatever that feeling is, you let it flood through you. You become it. And from that feeling, still in that drowsy state, you let yourself drift into actual sleep. You don't try to stay awake holding the scene. You simply relax into unconsciousness while the feeling is still present. Write in the comments, "Tonight I fall asleep fulfilled." Because making that commitment now increases the likelihood you'll actually follow through when you're lying in bed later. Now here's a principle that's going to shift how you see every relationship and interaction in your financial life. And once you understand this, you'll never blame another person for your circumstances again. Everyone in your world is you pushed out. I know that sounds strange at first, but let me explain what this actually means. The people around you, your employer, your clients, your family, your friends, they are not operating independently of your consciousness. They are reflections of what you believe about yourself. They are mirrors showing you your own self-concept, your own assumptions, your own inner conversations made visible and tangible through their behavior toward you. If your employer undervalues you, doesn't appreciate your work, refuses to give you the raise you deserve, it's not because your employer is unfair or blind to your worth. It's because you undervalue yourself in consciousness. If clients won't pay you what you're worth, if people constantly try to negotiate you down or get your services for less, it's not because the market is cheap or people don't understand quality. It's because in your consciousness, you haven't given yourself permission to be worth that much. If money doesn't flow to you from others, if opportunities don't come, if doors stay closed, it's because in the secret depths of your awareness, you haven't claimed abundance as your identity. This is both confronting and liberating. Confronting because it means you can no longer blame external people for your financial situation. You can't point to your difficult boss or your cheap clients or your unsupportive family and say they're the reason you're struggling. But it's liberating because it means you have complete power to change everything simply by changing your self-concept. Change how you see yourself, and everyone in your world must change how they see you and treat you. They have no choice. They're reflecting you back to yourself with perfect accuracy. So what does this mean practically? It means Transformation isn't about changing techniques or finding new strategies. It's about changing who you are in consciousness and then maintaining that change consistently until it becomes your natural state. Let me give you 3 practices that, if you do them faithfully, will completely transform your financial reality. These aren't complicated. They're actually quite simple. But simple doesn't mean easy, and it definitely doesn't mean optional if you're serious about change. First, every single night without exception, you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled before you fall asleep. Not sometimes, not when you remember, not when you're in the mood. Every night. This is your non-negotiable practice. You use the technique I just described. Get into that drowsy state and imagine a scene that implies your desire is already done. Feel the feeling of having it and drift into sleep from that feeling. This is how you plant seeds in the subconscious. This is how you impress consciousness. This is how you create. Second, during your day, you discipline your inner speech relentlessly. You become hyper-aware of what you're saying to yourself, particularly what you claim after those 2 powerful words, I am. Every time you catch yourself saying, I am broke, or I am struggling, or I am worried, you stop immediately. You don't let it continue. You replace it on the spot with, I am wealthy, I am abundant, I am secure. You do this not as empty affirmations, but as conscious. A choice is about what identity you're claiming. You're training yourself to live from abundance rather than lack, and that training happens through disciplined inner speech. Third, every night before you do your sleep practice, you revise your day. You go back through the events that happened, and you rewrite in imagination any scene that reinforced lack or limitation. You take every moment that triggered fear, anxiety, or insufficiency, and you change it so it confirms abundance instead. This prevents you from carrying negative impressions into sleep, and it trains your consciousness to interpret circumstances through the lens of prosperity rather than poverty. These 3 practices, assuming at night, disciplining during the day, revising before sleep, are not suggestions. They're not optional extras for people who want to go deeper. They're the actual work of transformation. Do them consistently, and your financial life must change. It's not maybe, not hopefully, not if you're lucky. It's inevitable because you're changing the cause, and the effect has no choice but to follow. Write in the comments, I commit to these 3 practices, because public commitment strengthens private resolve. And resolve is what carries you through when the old patterns try to reassert themselves. Now let me reveal something about time that will completely change how you approach manifestation, and it's going to sound radical at first. But stay with me, because this understanding removes one of the biggest obstacles people face. Time is an illusion. There is no past, there is no future, there is only now. Everything that has ever happened or will ever happen exists in this eternal present moment, and the only thing that changes is which aspect of the now you're tuned into through your consciousness. When you assume the wish fulfilled, when you claim, I am wealthy right now in this moment, you're not creating something that will manifest in the future. You're creating it now. In consciousness, it's done now. It exists now. You're wealthy now. The fact that you haven't seen it reflected in your physical bank account yet doesn't mean it's not real. It just means there's a lag time, a delay between the now of consciousness and the now of physical manifestation. The outer manifestation is simply consciousness hardening into form, the invisible becoming visible, the inner reality projecting itself onto the screen of space and time. This is why asking, when will it happen, is actually counterproductive. The question itself comes from the consciousness of waiting, and waiting is just the continuous confession that you don't have. But if you understand that it's already done in consciousness, that the creation is complete the moment you assume it, then there's nothing to wait for. There's only the process of the outer world catching up to the inner reality you've established. And that catching up is inevitable. It's not a matter of if, only a matter of time, and time itself is just the mechanism through which consciousness translates into experience. So stop living in the future. Stop postponing your sense of abundance until the money appears. Stop waiting for external validation before you claim the identity of wealth. It's done now. In consciousness, which is the only reality, you already have what you desire. The numbers in your account are just echoes of yesterday's consciousness. Change today's consciousness, and tomorrow's numbers must change. This is not hope. This is understanding the mechanics of reality. And this understanding brings us to the final and most profound truth I can share with you, the recognition that changes everything forever. You are not the beggar at the gate, hoping someone will let you in. You are the gate itself. You are not the servant waiting for the master to arrive and grant you permission to be abundant. You are the master. You are not a powerless individual at the mercy of external forces, waiting for the universe to decide if you're worthy. You are consciousness itself. You are imagination itself. You are the very power that creates worlds, and that power is operating through you right now, in this moment, creating your reality with absolute precision based on what you're assuming to be true. This is not metaphor. This is not spiritual poetry meant to make you feel good. This is literal truth. The creative power of the universe is not outside you. It is you. Your consciousness is God. Your imagination is the force that brings form out of formlessness. Your assumptions are the commands that shape reality. And when you truly understand this, when this recognition moves from concept to lived experience, everything changes. You stop begging. You stop hoping. You stop waiting. You start commanding, assuming, claiming. And then you rest, knowing that what you've claimed in consciousness must appear in manifestation because there is no other power, no other creative force, no other reality besides consciousness. So tonight, when you lie down to sleep, you're not hoping that some external power might grant your wish. You're claiming it as already yours because you are the power. You're assuming it's done because you are the creator. You're resting in the Sabbath of completion because you understand that consciousness is the only reality, and you've just changed your consciousness. And when consciousness changes, the entire vast world must rearrange itself to accommodate that change. It has no choice. It's law. It's inevitable. It's done. Write in the comments, I am the creator of my reality, because speaking this truth is the beginning of living from it. The moment you stop being the victim and step into your role as the conscious creator of your experience. So here we are, at the end of this journey together, and if you've made it this far, I want you to know that says something important about you. Most people would have clicked away when things got uncomfortable, when the teaching challenged their current beliefs about reality. But you stayed, you listened. You're ready for this transformation, even if part of you is still uncertain about how to apply it. If this content resonated with you, if something shifted inside while you were watching, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. I create these videos because this understanding changed my life, and I've seen it change countless others. There's real value here. Practical wisdom that actually works when you apply it consistently. By subscribing, you're making sure you don't miss the next piece of the puzzle, the next layer of understanding that might be exactly what you need to hear. And look, if you made it all the way to this moment, write in the comments, this message was meant for me. I read every comment, and there's something powerful about declaring your readiness publicly. It's a form of commitment to yourself, a statement to the universe that you're stepping into this new understanding. If you found value in what we explored today, go ahead and leave a like on this video. It helps others who need this message find it, and it lets me know this content is landing the way I intended. Your engagement genuinely matters because it shapes what I create next. There's another video right here that goes even deeper into how to maintain these states when circumstances seem overwhelming. It's the perfect continuation of what we just covered. Click on it and keep going with me. This is just the beginning of understanding the true nature of your creative power. I'll see you there.